Hey everyone. So I recently talked about training versus working out. An essential part of that is getting consistent sleep. If you're not getting the sleep that you need, your training will suffer. Your recovery will be suboptimal and your gains will be suboptimal if you make any at all. You can essentially consider bad sleep hygiene to be suboptimal training, just like you should consider poor application of progressive overload and poor eating habits as suboptimal training. Not to mention that poor sleep is associated with increased risk for cardiovascular diseases and obesity and diabetes, etc. But most people suffer from irregular sleep habits, not intentionally, of course. I'm here to help you with that. Rhythm and I are going to spot you on your sleep gains this year, or something. So, quick story time. I was an immigrant-only child raised by a single immigrant mother that had to relentlessly work nights to support me during my adolescent years. As a result, as a hyper-imaginative adolescent, I rarely went to sleep at night. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was often terrified and alone. Being the child of a single-parent mother meant living in low-income areas and all the risks associated with that. It also didn't help that for some years I literally lived about 30 feet away from a graveyard. If someone ambushed me with an image of a zombie or Freddy Krueger, forget about it. I wasn't sleeping for weeks. Sometimes I go days without sleeping or sleep very minimally because I often didn't feel safe to go to sleep until I saw the sun peeking over the horizon. I'd literally check minute to minute because in movies, robbers and monsters alike would all explode into a ball of flames at that very moment if they weren't in their hideouts and crypts at the first hint of dawn, I guess. So nights would be spent playing video games and watching Nick at Night reruns until the first signs of felicitous daybreak. Once I saw the sun, any anxiety quickly dissipated and I'd sleep as much as I could before having to catch the school bus to prison. School. This wouldn't be as much of a problem in middle school as it would be in high school, where school would start much earlier. Needless to say, these poor sleep habits killed me academically. Despite teachers seeing my potential and desire to learn, it was hard for them to help me because I'd often miss a school bus or just skip classes altogether that were too early just so that I can get some extra sleep. As a result, I would barely graduate high school. These poor sleep habits followed me well into my adult life, where working late nights in restaurants just made sense for me since it coincided with my lack of ability to fall asleep at night. If I didn't fall asleep until 4 a.m., I wouldn't get screwed the next day if I had to get up for regular work hours. It also contributed to overall very poor lifestyle habits, where I gained over 100 pounds out of high school and became a type 2 diabetic. Now, why am I telling you all this? Certainly not for sympathy. It's just to illustrate two things. One, how important consistent sleep is to your overall life circumstances, and two, poor sleep habits always start from preceding life circumstances. It wasn't until that I was able to evaluate preceding life circumstances that I was able to address and resolve the issues that were contributing to my poor sleep habits. Being motivated by wanting to be in better health and better shape so that I could potentially be a more productive member of society certainly helped. Now, what if I told you that there's a surefire method to train yourself to get better sleep? In the same way you can train yourself to get stronger and bigger in the gym. You're not going to find any well-worn platitudes about putting phones and devices away before bed or lux levels from light sources in the evening, even though all that stuff is relevant. What I'm offering here is far more simple and straightforward. You have to understand the idea of circadian rhythm. You have to understand why it's essential and how to adapt it to your lifestyle. It's a term that exists in popular culture, but it's only vaguely understood by most. This isn't meant to be some deep dive on the subject, but succinctly defined from the National Institute of Health, circadian rhythm is a 24-hour internal clock in our brain that regulates cycles of alertness and sleepiness by responding to light changes in our environment. We are complex creatures of rhythmic nature, and what I mean by that is just like the sun and the stars or the ebb and flow of the tides, we operate on what feels like a divine order of rhythms, not just psychologically, but on a molecular level. And when I say on a molecular level, this is not me being hyperbolic or poetic or the truth being stretched and tenderized. There is an entire field of science called chronobiology, which studies the effects of circadian rhythms on the body. Your hormones, your cells, and even your genes operate on clocks influenced by environmental factors that are in and out of your control. Your heart rate often increases at the first sign of light when you wake up in the morning. You might consistently feel hungry around lunchtime because your body releases ghrelin into your bloodstream in anticipation of incoming calories if you typically eat around lunchtime. Same with dinner. A molecule called adenosine promotes drowsiness and builds up in your body throughout the day, reaching its peak saturation around bedtime. People that study sleep call this sleep pressure or homeostatic sleep drive. In the evening time, when light sources are reduced, a group of neurons in the region of your brain called the hypothalamus influence another region of your brain called the pineal gland to release a hormone into your bloodstream called melatonin that further helps promote sleep. This is all done rhythmically, and genes can have a profound influence on how this varies between individuals as well. While the concept of circadian rhythm is more appropriate for the more macro level organisms such as yourself, at the cellular and or molecular level, molecular clocks might be more appropriate. We're essentially clocks dressed in skin. So there's a lot of sources that talk about getting better sleep out there in accordance with circadian rhythms, many in some very superfluous ways in my opinion. There's the basics that your local town social influencer always clangs their bell about online. Limit screen time leading up to bed, create a good sleep environment, make sure you see sunlight every day, limit caffeine and alcohol intake, especially closer to bedtime. If you've been struggling with sleep, I'll be surprised if you haven't heard these things before. There's an aspect of sleep quality that is not talked about very much that, in my opinion, is the absolute most important methodology for adopting consistent sleep pattern and or adopting a healthy circadian rhythm if you struggle with sleep. Making sure that you, without fail, go to bed and rise from bed in a similar time frame every day, at least for long enough to entrain your circadian rhythm. Trying to develop good sleep habits requires you to double down on the habits part. That means some deliberate effort on your part, but also some environmental consistency as well. Imagine getting a new job across the city, but you don't live on Earth, but on an intermittently transmogrifying sentient mass called Omicron that literally has the inclination to transform your route to work every single morning. Yeah, you might still be able to get to work safely, but there's going to be some variations in the times you arrive. Right now, you likely have a certain level of muscle memory in regards to your route to work. You likely know the fastest available routes given how variables like the lights and traffic are likely to behave on that route. But if every day is like a shifting cityscape like in the movie Inception, developing any kind of muscle memory in those regards would be impossible. There are recent studies suggesting that despite what was thought for some time, you can actually catch up on sleep. If your sleep is trash during the week and you manage to sleep in on weekends a little bit longer or take random naps throughout the day, you can make up for what's called a sleep deficit. So basically, if your body needs say 8 hours of sleep per night, but you're only averaging about 6 hours of sleep, getting an extra 10 hours over the weekend is justified. Now, while this is potentially good news for those that generally have poor sleep habits during the week, I don't recommend taking this approach to adjust your sleep habits, especially since if you're on this illustrious channel, you're probably interested in having an optimal level of sleep for your health and fitness goals. Your sleep needs to be as consistent as your training and your nutrition. As such, we want a sleep pattern, and this methodology is not ideal for that. If you take this approach, you may alleviate some of the more damaging effects of sleep deprivation, but you will likely never fall into a consistent day-to-day sleep rhythm. The same way you want to find a good rhythm for your barbell squat during a set or good eating patterns throughout the day, a good sleeping rhythm is the ideal. I propose that you intentionally incur a sleep deficit or sleep debt, as I like to currently call it, that your body will pay back when it's ready. If you struggle to sleep tonight, instead of taking a nap during the day, for example, you're going to wear that restlessness like a badge of honor. You're going to go to bed at your ideal bedtime and you're going to set your alarm clock for your ideal wake time. Chances are just the anxiety of trying to get a good night's sleep will cause you restlessness, and you'll flip-flop like a salmon in a fish's net. I've been there. But still, you're going to commit to getting up at your ideal wake time, regardless of the quality of your sleep. Chances are good that you become accustomed to operating throughout the day with less than ideal sleep anyway, so if you're truly struggling with sleep, this shouldn't be too much of a challenge. You're going to go about your day as usual. Again, you're not going to nap. You're not going to use the fact that you didn't sleep as an excuse to skip the gym. You're not going to skip the after-work social with friends, unless that's going to keep you out past your bedtime or your friends like to karaoke Kanye albums. And you're going to go back to bed at your ideal time the following night and the night after that ad nauseum. In generating the sleep debt, you will, in time, likely increase your sleep pressure, as previously mentioned. There's data that suggests that the adenosine molecule I mentioned earlier gets cleared when you sleep. You're essentially accumulating adenosine in the brain in an effort to increase your sleep pressure and subsequently increase your chances of getting better sleep. Now, let me be clear. This is likely not going to work the first night. It likely won't work the second night either. It could take days, maybe even weeks. You're incurring a sleep debt that your body will pay back when it's ready. The same way you pay your debts in terms of time working out in the gym or meal prepping to reap the later benefits of those investments in terms of time. You're taking a CBT-I, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia approach. If you want to learn more about that, there'll be a link in the description. Now, there is a fine line. You don't want to go more than a day or two without actual sleep. Look up microsleep. This is some really fascinating stuff. So if you're suffering from actual persistent insomnia and not just poor sleep quality, you might want to seek professional guidance in this practice. Now, here's the most important thing, and where people are most likely to mess this up. It is absolutely essential that you keep up this practice on weekends, days off, or days where you're not strictly being held accountable to a routine, especially if you end up getting a quality night's sleep. Doubly so if it starts happening sequentially. For anyone that's struggling with keeping up with an exercise routine, for example, you understand what a fickle sprite a fresh good habit can be. It might stick around for a few weeks at most and then spontaneously packs its bags and leaves without notice. And this will likely happen without the deliberate training of a sleep pattern for an extended, dedicated period of time, maybe several weeks to months depending on the person. This is why exercise is such an essential element of a healthy lifestyle, both physiologically and psychologically. When you exercise, it not only demonstrably decreases levels of anxiety, increasing your chances of getting better sleep, adenosine becomes a byproduct of cellular metabolism, increasing the aforementioned sleep pressure or homeostatic sleep drive. Good nutrition promotes good exercise. You see how this all starts to fit and becomes a self-sustaining positive feedback loop? Now, I get it. Some of us would rather eat a pistol for a pre-workout than be a slave to a daily routine. Ironically, it tends to be the same kind of person that hates routines that will copiously claim that they want to live in harmony with nature or some crap. But I digress. Arrhythmic living is about as unnatural as it comes. And if you've seen my content before, you know I don't use the term natural lightly. Everyone is different. Everyone has their own rhythms and priorities. You have to be willing to ask yourself, is my current lifestyle rhythm in accordance with my current goals and values, and go from there. At the end of the day, we're human beings. Despite our genetic similarities, we diverge behaviorally in myriad complex ways. As a result, we all desire some degree of novelty, but rhythm and routine is necessary to some degree for everyone, especially when it comes to things related to your health like sleep. No one is saying that you never have late nights out with friends, never stay up late failing at Elden Ring, never take power naps, or never sleep in on a Sunday ever again. When you have good sleep habits, your body is going to adapt to your average daily tendencies, and everything else your body will treat as an outlier. If your sleep is currently struggling, you have to earn that level of physiological flexibility, and that's going to require some training. I'm relating this to you because this is the method that worked for a 300 pounds type 2 diabetic insomniac. I stumbled onto this method of fixing my sleep habits intuitively, but doing the research, I was happy to see that there was scientific evidence supporting it, which is why I feel confident in relating it to you. I used to actually fear bedtime because it felt like a dice throw. Now I can't lie in bed for longer than 5 minutes without falling asleep, even with devices on. I'm not a doctor, physician, or sleep scientist, just a nappy-headed nerd that likes to look into stuff and help people get into better health and better shape through personal training practices. Please consult your primary physician for the most actionable advice relevant to you if you struggle with insomnia. Hopefully this helps. Let's get some gains on our sleep this year. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you found this helpful. Business contact information in the description for online training. Patreon is also down below if you want to help me generate content better and faster. Laters.